everyone. Looks like we're having a few technical difficulties coming into here, so happy that we are able to make it. And welcome to the first ever actor chat on La Dame's Critique's page. So this is very exciting. So I'm hoping to make the series out of this. So it's a 45-minute chat with an actor that I might know or might not know. It could be a writer, an author, a producer, and obviously we'll change the name according to that. So it will be like a producer chat, a director chat, an author chat. But now we're starting the series with an actor chat, and we have the excellent Sam Humphrey as a guest today. So I'm very excited to get started and talk about everything about his career and of course the current strike that is happening with actors in Hollywood. So it's going to be a very exciting talk. In the meantime, well, let me just introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Stephanie and I am the person behind La Dame Critique. And so I am from Montreal, Quebec. I work in the television industry and editing, and specifically in French-Canadian shows. So I am obviously French. I have a little bit of an accent, so excuse my French while we talk about all things film and all things everything here. So we'll also talk about his career of Sam. We'll talk about the strike. We'll talk about his advocacy. We have so much planned today. I'm so excited. And so I hope that you are too. So in the meantime, while Sam comes in, well, I guess I can talk to you a bit more about La Dame Critique and what I do on here. So every month I host a live film discussion with a guest. The guest doesn't need to be any professional in film, but you can just join in and we can have talk about any recent film that's been going on. So you can definitely join and we can have a chat about a future film. So hopefully I'll see you there in one of those chats. And so what else? Other than that, I have been working on doing posts and reviews on every film and shows and books that I've been reading and consuming, and I've been doing some reviews about that. So it's been a really good time to work on that. And so other than that, I mean, I've been knowing Sam for a little bit now through a past project that I've been working on, which was called Vision Representation, while I was doing my communications and film degree. And it was a really good time, a whole year of an experience. I was working with people from all around the world to share about their life. So we would have I would have guests come on and they would talk about whatever that they were doing. So it was about diversity, basically. So whatever hardship that they were going through or whatever identity that they had, they were able to talk about that. And Sam was one of my guests, actually. So Sam was one of my guests we were doing this in 2020. So, I see that Sam is there, so he can request to join whenever he is ready. But yes, so we've been working on a really great project that was called Vision Representation in the past. So if you want to check out that episode, Sam gets really close and personal about some stuff that he has been through, about the Greatest Showman, and so much experience that he's gained in his life. So you can absolutely go check him out. And so if you want to know more about this documentary series, you can go check it out on YouTube. It was called Vision Representation. So you can just type Vision Representation, even Sam Humphrey, and I'm sure you will find it. So I see Sam has requested to join, so let me view my request. Join now. So wait on him. Did it work? I think it's gonna work. Awesome, hi!
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. How are you doing? It's been so long.
It has been a long time. I'm doing pretty good, all things considered, with the strike and everything else that's going on. Keeping in good spirits. So yeah,
that's good. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're in good spirits with everything going on. I'm sure we'll get into it a lot more as we get into this chat. But it's really good to see you. So, of course, thank you so much for accepting to do this interview. I mean, it's already it's the second time that we're doing an interview together, so I'm really grateful for this time that you're taking.
Of course, no worries. Love to.
Awesome. Well, that's really great. So
first off, I mean, if ever you have any questions for Sam or for me about the strike, about the Greatest Showman, about anything that you've worked on, about being an actor in Hollywood, you can definitely write a question in the comments, the live comments, and I'll try to moderate it well and so that we can answer those questions. So that's what we're here for. So first off, do you want to start by introducing yourself, Sam, who you are, what you've been doing? Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so for those that don't know who I am a little person, first off. I'm 4'2", I am 29 years old. I've been an actor. I've been pursuing acting since I was very young. I wanted to be an actor since I was 8 years old, and with my drive and determination, there was nothing else that I could see myself doing, and I pursued that to the best of my ability, and I've ended up in Hollywood somehow in this industry, and keep on going. Obviously, for those that do know who I am, obviously I portrayed a character Tom Thumb in The Greatest Showman. However, because there is a strike going on, I am not allowed to promote any past or future projects that have been performed or are going to be released by the strike companies. So I will be, although I will touch on some of the Greatest Showman stuff, I will be trying to refrain from, answering too much about any of that.
Absolutely. That makes a bunch of sense. And is that a directive that has been from SAG? Have they requested that kind of moderation of not talking about past or future projects that you are working on?
Yes. So for all the union actors, and just to also quickly clarify, to be transparent, I am not currently a union member of SAG AFTRA. I am a non-union member. I'm SAG eligible, which basically means I'm eligible to join the union. However, I just have not joined it at this current time. However, just because you are a non-union member, you can still, acting as a whole is ruled over by SAG. So even if you are not a member and you're on set or you're doing a project, if there's any sort of discrepancy or ruling about, the project you're doing, regardless if it's union or not, or you have questions, you can contact SAG about those issues and questions, and they'll help you straighten that out. So although I'm not a union right now, regardless, it is a, it's a very perilous and important time for the industry as a whole, whether or not you're union by the guild or whether or not, you're not. Just to stand up and say that being a part of this industry, if you want to be a part of this industry, we're fighting for the future of the entertainment industry. And so if we don't stand up in solidarity, union member or not, this industry may not be here 5 to 10 years. So it's very important, regardless of whether or not you belong to the unions or not, that we support the unions because they are doing very important work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have been really resourceful. I've already knew the answer to this question because I have looked a lot into the strike in the past, but just so that people can know. But it has been really insightful, and their website has been really, really great to just describe what the strike is about, what their aim is, and also what everyone can do in a sense for it. So as a critique, I have tried to limit as much content as I can to not necessarily promote as many movies as I can. I mean, it's difficult because that's kind of part of what I do, but it is a different way of doing it in a sense. Like, it's not about just promoting theater showings, but also talking about film as a whole, as the value of film and not necessarily the value of the industry itself and the value of the studios. So it's been interesting to read about how SAG has been, for critiques specifically, how they've told us not necessarily to cut on boycotting watching movies and all that stuff. That's not what they're saying, but it's really interesting and resourceful the way that they've directed us in the way that we can talk about all those things. So I found that really nice.
I mean, that's the whole promotion part of it, the directive from SAG, and I don't know if there's been a directive from WGA about no promotion. I would assume so. But the whole promotion, especially from the actor side, The reason these A-listers, and this is the unfortunate thing that the public is, saying, the public that's uninformed is saying, actors just want more money, we're being greedy and we're just fighting for more money. That's not true. Now, the reason the A-listers make so much money and get paid so much that people don't really think about is because of the promotion and marketing side. Mm-hmm. Half the reason you go to see these movies is because you want to go see them, because you enjoy the characters they play, you enjoy the sense of going to the movie theater and seeing your favorite celebrity, mm-hmm. going through, stories that relate to you, or you just enjoy their acting. And so, and them not promoting these films, that's a big win, for us. And, that's a big strike against these companies, that they can't roll in, those extra millions of dollars. Not that they're necessarily having much trouble. Anyway, which is why, for them to plead, poverty during these negotiations is absolutely ridiculous.
It is. It is absolutely ridiculous. Studios have been doing very well and for many years, and so pushing back their dates has been an interesting debate. And I think that, they have the power to do so, and it shows how unfair this industry has become. When you think about it, Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio, they're making millions of dollars on those movies, on whatever movies they're making. But at the same time, they have made a name for themselves in a sense. Mm. And so people go see those movies because Leonardo DiCaprio is in it or Brad Pitt is in it. And for that sole reason alone, why did Top Gun make so much money? It was because Tom Cruise was in it. If they would have replaced it with anyone else, I'm not sure this movie would have been as successful as it was last year. So the face is super important.
And one thing to talk about, fair pay, the A-listers, they're already making a lot of money, but when you're down to the basis of it, they would be making, it is ridiculous to say, oh yeah, they would be making way more, but it's true. On the basis of fair pay and wages and residuals and all that, which is what we're fighting for, which is what we'll go more into detail, but they are also being treated unfairly in terms of compensation and residuals and all that stuff. Yeah, sure, they are already making millions of dollars, but regardless of that, they are still also being unfairly treated. Obviously, the scale and the contrast to, them versus, the journeyman actor and, the below the line people. Obviously, the contrast to that is, incomparable. We're making literally next to nothing, like background actors, casting, normal journeyman actors, writers. We're making next to nothing. So the thing is, how do we manage to survive when we're making, just as they're being treated unfairly, we're being untreated fairly? How do we, in comparison, make enough money to survive? They're being squeezed, but they still have, their name, their brand, their millions of dollars of net worth that they have. We don't have that. So if we get squeezed, ultimately, at the end of the day, we are being screwed because we don't have what the A-listers or the major actors have. So.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure on the stats completely, but I think part of the SAG members, the A-listers are probably 5% of all of the members of SAG. So it's really unfair to say these A-listers are complaining when a lot of the other union members are not A-listers, and that they are suffering from this strike a lot, and they're fighting for fair pay. And I feel like we're talking too much about the A-listers and we're not talking about everyone else.
Well, I think the problem is there, and obviously, the studios, and we have done this too, but the studios have wanted to create this false narrative about, obviously a part of the promotion and the marketing is pushing them to the forefront because what makes, the studios back their money. But one thing that's really important, we're also seeing A-listers talking about the strike because they are union members, so they're not allowed to talk about their projects and whatnot. And the reason they're talking about the strike, which is good, is the fact they have such a name, they have such a reach, that they can reach their millions of fans and say, we're not on strike because we're not making enough, we're on strike for everyone else who's not making enough. And our voice carries so much more weight than, for example, myself, yeah, I've got some decent credits and, you know, some stuff that I've done, but my voice versus, you know, Hugh Jackman or versus Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio or Matt Damon's, you know, from Oppenheimer, all the major cast had to walk off the red carpet in London from Oppenheimer when the strike was announced. So all of those, like those guys, seeing them walk off the red carpet once the strike was announced carries way much more weight than, you know, me, you know, as amazing as it is talking with you, their voice carries way more weight than, you know, I do or a lot of these, you know, smaller uncredited actors.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, the more we talk about it, the more that like we make an impact of whether it's one person or millions. I mean, of course, they have the impact of millions of people,
Yeah.
but we might as well start with at least changing the mind of one person.
Of course, yeah.
Anyways, so let's backtrack a little bit more and talk about how you became an actor. So you've said that you were passionate about it when you were pretty young. So tell me a little bit about your acting journey and how you came to be in Hollywood.
So I grew up in New Zealand. I'm a Kiwi. And my passion for acting kind of grew from these many little skits that me and my siblings and family friends, kids that I grew up with that we would put on for our parents. And I think as I did enough of those with, you know, my siblings and our family, kids, friends, I enjoyed that. I don't know how good it was for our parents. We forced them to watch them. I'm sure they were proud. But as I grew up, around about the age of 8 was the first time I saw Hugh Jackman on the big screen. And, you know, like every teenage boy or young boy was, I was a big fan of the X-Men. And so I just saw him doing that. And that kind of took a light, like it resonated with me. I was like, I want to do that. And then I learned that obviously, you know, being a mutant like him, slashing out bad guys, which is acting. And so that's when I kind of learned a little bit more about acting. And honestly, one of the things that pulled me in too was like Hugh Jackman's just a really good, nice, all-round human being. And learning about his philanthropy work was also like really drew me to his personality and his character. And I was like, if I'm going to make it in Hollywood or like push forward with, you know, this thing acting, he's the guy that I want to try and replicate or have an example. And then from there, I just pursued acting through, you know, school, high school, after school extracurricular activities, and one thing led to another, and here I am in Hollywood.
That's crazy to go through like a journey of like making a dream come true in a sense. And obviously you did end up making a movie with Hugh Jackman. So how did it feel to get that first role with him? And knowing that it was with him, basically, that you got this big role.
It was very surreal, you know, just thinking, before that, I had my agent in the UK, which I actually completely forgot about, and that's how, you know, I ended up landing Greatest Showman. But jumped through all the hoops, and it wasn't until like I was kind of halfway through the auditioning process that I found out that Hugh Jackman was actually on the project. And before I found out, so like before I even got the audition, there was something inside me for intuition, you know, manifestation. I looked outside my bedroom window one day and just felt this really weird sense of intuition or calm. And I was just like, I'm going to do a film with Hugh Jackman. Like, I just felt that. And, you know, 1 year later, from that point, I wasn't exactly 1 year later from that point, but like roughly a year later, you know, I was going to be walking the red carpet with him. And so to find out that he was who I was going to be working with, and also to find out that it was a musical, especially when I said like I'd never do a musical, because I'm not musically talented or musically inclined. I couldn't sing to save my life, so I don't know how I ended up in a musical. But when I found out he was the guy, I was like, well, there's no harm in it, you know. What's the worst that can happen? So next thing I know, I'm in a musical.
Did you end up on the musical soundtrack?
Not my voice. So again, I can't sing. So.
I don't blame you. I can't sing for shit either.
Yeah,
I'm more of a
maybe in the
singer.
shower. That's it. But
Yeah,
everyone sings
exactly.
in the shower.
Yeah, we're Celine Dion in the shower.
I mean, I'm not even that, but
Yeah, I
not in
know.
the shower. No.
Awesome. Well, that must have been incredible. And you talk about manifestation. I mean, obviously, it's something that you have been dreaming about and talking about ever since you were a child and imagining Wolverine and all that stuff. So, what do you have to say about manifestation and having that like power of positivity in your life?
Yeah, well, I think I was brought up Christian, so I think I think honestly there's like a connection with like manifestation and Christianity. Like, I mean, I know from my own past experiences, and there are people out there who say they aren't on board with manifestation. And growing up Christian, I kind of felt a little awkward about that myself. But as I've grown up, I found that it's just another form of like prayer. What is prayer but praying and believing and trusting in God, which is another way to say the universe. What's bad about saying that God is the universe? Like, we don't understand who or what or that God.
Hello, everyone. It looks like we just got disconnected, unfortunately. So this is the part 2 of the actor chat with Sam Humphrey. Sorry if you guys got cut off. I'm gonna try to merge these two videos together, these two parts together. We'll see if that works. I'm not even sure I can save these videos after being live, but we'll try to find a solution to be able to work this out. This is so unfortunate that it got cut off and it was disconnected because Sam was on such a good talk about mental health and how the past few years has been quite difficult with everything going on with COVID and the strike now and so many things. So it's really unfortunate that it got cut off, but Sam is going to come back and join. So I've started the live and he can request to join whenever he comes in. But I guess I'll just talk a little bit about what we were chatting about. So basically this actor chat is the first of a series. So if ever you know a producer or a writer or an author or anyone that works in the film, TV, or book industry and that would like to be a guest on one of these series, I mean, this is what I made this for. It's a place to be able to talk about things that we love with people that have been able to make those things. So that's pretty much the concept of the show. And so I invited a friend called Sam, and we have been working on other projects in the past, which was called Vision of Representation, which was a documentary series that I had worked on. It's on YouTube if ever you guys want to watch it. You can just type Vision of Representation, Sam Humphrey, and you'll definitely find it. And it was a documentary series about inclusivity and diversity and hearing diverse voices talk about their hardships and just so that we can be a little bit more understanding and loving of one another. So I created that during the pandemic in a time where it was lots of isolation and lots of time that we weren't getting to see different people and interacting with different stories. So this was a good time to be able to, listen to other stories. So yeah, well, let's see if Sam's gonna come in soon. So there we go. We'll wait for that. But in the meantime, I guess I'll talk a little bit about advocacy for now. So advocacy is a reviewing channel, Instagram page that I've been working on for almost a year now. So it's been really great to work and talk with a bunch of people, a bunch of you guys. I host live movie discussions every month with guests that are just passionate film lovers, and so it's been really great to meet with everyone and talk about movies with people. So Sam has requested to join again.
This works. It's working, except... Oh, there we go. That's so unfortunate. This is the first time it's happened to me.
It might also be on my end, though. I might not have the best connection, but I swapped off Wi-Fi just in case that was it.
Oh, well, even then, I got disconnected too. Like, I was surprised that it was just, like, if it was on your end, then I guess it would have just, like, disconnected you, but it also disconnected me and everything. It's like my app closed and everything was weird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
hopefully the video is saved that I'll
Yeah,
be able to like
hopefully.
stitch them together or something. But I guess we'll just go on and talk about where we were at. So
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about how you were able to bring your positive light and your positive energy into your advocacy, and you're speaking about mental health and how in the past few years it's been quite difficult with the pandemic and now the strike. So do you want to just go on about that?
Yeah, so like I was saying, just about the whole mental health issues have been very prevalent in the last, 5 years, especially with COVID. We noticed that a lot more mental health, issues came up during COVID, with everyone having to be trapped inside, and distancing from one another. And then also, unfortunately, the mental health issues that arrived from being so close to one another. So for me, it's focusing, in myself and my own family history. There's been, some mental health, struggles, especially for myself. I've spoken about my struggles with suicide when I was a teenager. So for those of you guys that don't know, when I was a teenager, I struggled with suicide, which has been a big factor about why, I focused on mental health awareness, and also, why I started this brand, The Little Guy, because I think as a global metaphor and representation, I think that a lot of people are fighting up against, the system, and the reasons we have the strikes, not just in Hollywood, but the strikes that are now, becoming an inflection point across, the globe. Every time I'm reading articles and reading the news, we're seeing more and more strikes happening, and those are having more impact on your mental health as well. So I think we're coming to a point where there needs to be more help and more systems in place, because the the need for mental health, support is overwhelming. And I just don't think there's enough systems in place. And so that's where my own advocacy brand has, been born out of.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you being so open to talk about mental health. It's not something that everyone can easily talk about in a sense. And it's definitely for someone that like is in the film industry, that is an actor, that is like able to talk about this. This is a huge impact, just being a public figure and just being so open about it. So I thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And so with that, do you want to talk about rare advocate? You're being a rare advocate.
Mm-hmm. So, what was the
Sorry,
question?
what does it mean to you to be a rare advocate? What does it mean?
Yeah, I think for me, being a rare advocate, is something that I don't know whether it was something that was like established, but I mean, I started using that, and I started, representing myself as a rare advocate, just because, as I grew up being, a little person, I didn't see heaps of representation for myself in the world. I saw a lot of challenges for people, that weren't like me, but, in terms of labels in, society and the world that were in the same category as me, that I was shoved into because no one knew how to, how to label me, or how to like clarify who I was, other than, for me, being a rare advocate is so important, because I'm like, it comes down to just being a simple human being. That's what I think being a rare advocate is, to remind people that, as one of my, really good friends says, and she's an autism advocate, her one of her slogans is different, not less. And that's so important, because it's true. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and that's what my advocacy brand really stands for. And that's my philosophy, is that we're all human beings, no matter what we look like, no matter the religions, color of our skin, race, all of that. And that's where, being a rare advocate is so important, so that people can see that it's not about all of this, I don't want to say nonsense,
Mhm.
but you know, to me, it's just like when I look at it, I'm just like, why are we getting so caught up in all of the noise and details? Like, I mean, yeah, that's important to an extent, but when it comes to human life and like how we treat one another as a fellow human being, that's more important. So that's, you know, that's what it means to me to be a real advocate, is just stand up for a fellow human being,
Mhm.
you know. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't get when, you know, another person despises another human being for being a human being.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me.
It's true. There's still so much discrimination that is happening out there. I mean, I think the United States, or even the world, has never been this like separated on different opinions than ever before. I don't know if it's social media or anything that's creating this like separatist, not separatist, I'm this like segregated in a sense like opinion between like one very very conservative opinion and one very very non-conservative opinion, which is just creating so much tension. And
Mm.
I mean, just with that, there's so much discrimination that is being done, which is unfair off of just being like a human being and just being yourself in a sense. And like, why is that even fair? And I think, at least for me, that's why I've been working in, that's why I want to work in film, and I am currently working in TV, because I think representation is so important.
Mm.
And representation of all sorts of people, whether it's someone with a disability or someone with from the Black community. I mean, there's from so many communities out there. I think those minorities really need to be able to share their stories, and they need that platform. So, what does it mean to
Yeah.
you,
Um,
representation in the media?
Yeah, so I mean, that's just one thing there. It's like we're at a weird time in history, I think, and it's
Mm-hmm.
such an inflection point, which, you know, is very much related to the strike, which we'll get to. But I think it's a catch-22, the system we have now. It's so like, with everything that's going on, we're so like combined in terms of solidarity, in terms of like, you know, labor and not, you know, taking advantage of, you know, human labor. But at the same time, we're so divided on so many critical issues, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the race, religion, culture, society, politics, even wealth, and like what it means to stand up for a fellow human being. You know, we have a lot of people saying like, this is what we need to do, you know, and this is how we fix the problem. But then we're not doing that. And I think when it comes to, you know, politics is a hard thing to discuss. And, you know, for me personally, I'm not on either side. I look straight down the middle and I'm like, one side, you know, both sides are doing the best they can to try and fix the problem, and then and then also both sides are also creating the problem, because there's no real bipartisanship, you know, working together to solve the issue. And from, you know, not being a U.S. citizen and not, you know, growing up in the country, coming from an outside perspective, where, you know, politics has never been such a decisive issue where I grew up. I'm like, one party gets into power and they create like this huge, you know, plan of how they're going to fix things. But then the problem is they don't necessarily stay in power. The other party then potentially gets in power, and they want to reverse everything. So it's like it just goes back and forth. It's like, can't we just do what's in the best nature of, you know, everyone, rather than just constantly fighting each other? So that's why I'm straight down the middle. I'm like, look, we need to cooperate for what's in the best interest of human beings, rather than necessarily political parties, you know, and power and greed. And that's the whole inflection point of where we're at today, with all these various strikes around the globe, you know, trying to balance out the scale of this broken system more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I understand you, because I'm also coming from an outside perspective of being a Canadian, and not really being related to all this political stuff that's
Yeah.
happening in the United States. But I think it all comes down to ignorance in the end. And I think that like, if everyone would just take a little bit more time to educate themselves and not be so hateful of other people in general, whether it's their opinion, their identity, or anything, and just treat everyone with respect. And just love and understanding in a sense, I think that we would just all be a better world.
Would be 1 inch closer to utopia.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, it takes all sorts of people to make one world. That's one of my grandfather's favorite quotes. So
Good one.
it takes all sorts of people to make one world. So it works better in French because because it makes more sense with the words. But anyways,
Right.
whatever. I'm translating and sharing it through the world right now. Anyways, so we're gonna move on to what does it feel to be a minority in the industry at the moment?
I think to be a minority in the industry at this current time is very interesting, because like we're looking at now in the industry, we've had so much advancement towards diversity, equality, and inclusion, to the point where I think, unfortunately, people have gotten a little bit tired of it, because it hasn't necessarily come authentically. Like, I mean, I understand why it's been forced a bit, because it has been, ignored for so long. But I think when you force it and jam it down people's throats, to use an analogy, like me, when I was growing up, my parents force-fed me vegetables. Didn't necessarily make me like them, to today. So if we force-feed people an ideology or an agenda, which is what I think sometimes this comes down to, then people are going to be resistant to it. It's just like the idea of manifestation. The more you focus and the more resistant to it you are, the more it's going to come back to you, because you're focusing so much on it because you're trying to resist it. And obviously, I am happy with the advancements that were made towards diversity, inclusion, and equality. But I think we have a long ways to go in terms of authentic inclusion and equality and diversity. I think right now we've gotten to a point where it has gotten better, but it's also gotten to a point where it's tokenism. And it's a checklist where, in productions today, like people, when a studio's like going through whether or not it might be a hit, they'll be like, do we have someone of disability? Do we have someone of color? Do we have someone of LGBTQ? Do we have the right balance of LGBTQ versus, non? Do we have the right balance between, all these different cultural diversities and things like that, to the point where people are like, if the story calls for it, it calls for it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, we shouldn't be just jamming it in there for the sake of jamming it in there. Sometimes you watch a film or a TV series back and you're like, I get it, and I'm kind of okay with it, but at the same time, it's like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, why did that have to be in there? Like, it didn't necessarily push the story forward. It didn't necessarily make the story better. It's just in there for the pure fact of having, that type of character in there. So I think we have more work to do with, that in general. And then, personally for me, I think there's a minority gap with little people in the industry that hasn't really caught up to the rest of the minority groups, because I think little people hasn't really been seen as a minority group in the industry yet. And so I personally am trying to lead the push for, more little people in films, that social perspective around, a little person being in a project means that, it has to be a dwarf, or it has to be a leprechaun, or it has to be, a fantasy creature, or, the story specifically needs a little person. Those projects are great, and, I'm not fully against playing, an elf or whatever. In fact, there's a project that I am actually working on independently, and, once all the strike's over, hopefully we can sell it, where I do play an elf. But I am playing an elf that's disguised as a human being for a while. So there's a twist on me playing a Christmas elf. So, it depends on how the story is told and whether or not that character is authentic to the story and not just shoved in there for tokenism.
I agree. I'm so happy you brought this up. And it's something that I brought up in many reviews in the past year that I've been doing on this profile. And it was that a lot of the times representation is being done in like just like a checklist. It's like sort of like whitewashed and done just because they want to meet their quotas. And it's unfortunate because a lot of the times those movies that are about Black stories or LGBTQ stories or Indigenous stories are very disappointing and not well fleshed out, and it's really disappointing to see. I'm going to talk about I mean, I guess I'm not really promoting it, but whatever. It's the Red, White, and Royal Blue movie that just came out, which is about an LGBTQ bromance, is really sweet, and it's really great to finally have a representation of that. But to have it being done so like not well developed, with characters that are not well fleshed out and that are not well written, that are not well directed, that the music is hallmarky, and all those kinds of things is very disappointing to see, because we're not actually representing them in like a good light, in a sense. Like, we're just representing them as like this fluffy story that could have been so much better and so much more developed and deep than it was. And it's unfortunate because the book is such a great source material, and to have seen that like it has kind of become something a little bit more just as a way to create a quota, in a sense, or to be like sort of ungenuine. And I mean, it's not, that's an example, but there's so many other examples out there of films that have been done by many different studios that unfortunately they're just like putting a Black character just to put a Black character without having any like background development based on that, which they don't necessarily need, but sometimes it is very, very, very important to add to the story, because it can make it so much better, in a sense.
And then, I mean, and then the one thing to that as well is like, when it's one thing for doing tokenism, but then it's another thing that when you are doing tokenism, that you don't even like necessarily always cast authentically. Like, you know, there's many issues that come up with, you know, films and television series where, you know, they cast a person in a wheelchair, but then the person isn't actually a wheelchair user. Or they cast a hard of hearing person, and the actor isn't actually hard of hearing. Or, you know, and there's many occasions of this. And obviously going into there's the whole controversy of, you know, little people not being cast in projects where there should be little people. And, you know, a lot of people have brought this up to me. And, you know, obviously I have my opinions on it. Obviously, if they're going to do a project that has little people authentically in the story, you know, for example, the Dwarves, or, you know, in the latest Willy Wonka movie that's coming out, I don't know whether it was CGI'd or how they did it, to be honest, but Hugh Grant is the face of the Oompa Loompa. And, you know, no promotion, obviously, but like this, it's hard to think what's going through, you know, the minds of the studios when they're like, they are going to get cussed out, you know, they are going to get, you know, flack for whether they do it or they don't do it. So then my thing is, you know, why not do it? Give people the option. I mean, you know, a minority group that doesn't get employed much at all, you know, the option to do that project. Because, you know, again, one way or another, people are going to say, oh, you shouldn't cast little people, or you should cast little people.
Yeah.
So at least, you know, I think you're doing better by allowing little people to work. And then, you know, there's all sorts of reasons and narratives going around why the studios didn't do it. You know, I try not to get caught up in all of that, just because I'm like, at the end of the day, you know, it don't change anything whether, you know, they've obviously decided to not do it. So me complaining about it, or, you know, you know, I've been contacted even to give like a comment about it, and I'm like, you know what, this is not worth my time. It's done and dusted. You know, I can't change anything, and I definitely don't want to make an enemy of Disney. But they're kind of making enemies of everyone at the moment. But yeah, so I wrote back to the person who was like, you know, they were journalists and wanted to comment. I was like, you know, if you want to comment, I would rather, you know, give a comment regarding the strike. You know, this is a more pressing issue than, you know, something that happened, you know, 7-8 months ago about something that, you know, can't be changed.
Yeah, it can't be changed. And it's the same thing with the Snow White movie that's going to be made with, they're all using like whole humans in a sense instead of using little humans for dwarves. And it's unfortunate because there are little actors, you know, like there are small humans that can be casted for those jobs, and it's unfortunate that it hasn't been chosen for that for whatever reason it is. It's unfortunate because it gives those jobs for those people. And I'm not saying that like little people should only be casted for little people roles. Like they should be cast for any kinds of roles because they're able to do that no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think
it's just saying that if you're going to do a project specifically in the, you know, authentic storyline that has little people, one, you shouldn't try to do that with CGI, and two, you shouldn't be casting, you know, able-bodied, not to say that little people aren't able-bodied, because we are, we're just shorter, but you shouldn't be casting inauthentic, normal sized, I don't even know how to say this, but normal sized people to play a role, you know, that a clearly able-bodied little person can play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to the strike. You want to talk a little bit about what is it all about for people that don't know, that have been living under a rock? What is the strike all about? What are you guys fighting for?
So this is why we strike. You've probably seen that. I mean, you've probably seen that on a lot of people's, you know, actors' profiles and things like that, which says, you know, why we strike. There are a lot of key issues as to why we are on strike right now. And a lot of people, like I said in the previous live that we went on, a lot of people are misinformed and think that, you know, actors and writers, mainly actors, because we're the face of the industry, we're complaining and being greedy and we want more money. That is not true. You're seeing a false marketing narrative from studios, and the fact that, you know, major A-listers are on, you know, social media and news and stuff saying that, you know, we're fighting for fair wages, you know, not being undercut by AI and all this stuff. And so the people are thinking, oh, why are these millionaire A-list actors complaining about not getting enough money? They are the big faces and voices that really make an impact for a lot of us littler names that, you know, don't have a massive impact. So the main reason why we're on strike is because since 1960, SAG WGA and WGA have not been on strike for at the same time since 1960, and that was when the contract was first developed. And when actors and writers went on strike back in 1960, they fought for residuals, and they fought for health, and they fought for pension. And because of that, that is why, you know, that's why actors have been able to sustain in this industry and make a fairly good living and wage in this industry up until, you know, 5-10 years ago. The business model has changed so much in the last, you know, decade with AI. AI is, you know, one of the latest developments that's been, you know, trending in the last, you know, few years. But in the last, you know, 5 to 10 years, digital and streaming has impacted the way actors and writers have made their, you know, living wages. And I don't quite know the statistics for WGA, but for SAG-AFTRA, there's 160,000 members, probably a little bit, you know, more, and not including non-union members either. So that number would be far greater with non-union members as well. But as of the union, 160,000 members, and only 86% of those members make the minimum $26,500 to qualify for the health insurance. Meaning, most of those, you know, actors, that percentage don't make a minimum of $26,500 a year. Only an average of, roughly 13% of actors make an average of $55,000 and can qualify for the health insurance. And that's including like all the A-listers and everything. But that means only of that 13% that can qualify, an average only make $65,000. So that even that is not like an insane amount for, you know, business model that we have today. Now with streaming that has, you know, developed in the last, you know, decade, there's no residuals with streaming, because what happened, you know, with television and cable back before streaming became, a major thing, was what was called syndication. So when a television series gets picked up, the more networks they are on and the more eyes that watch that programming, the more, I guess, licensed out to other networks. And then back then they had longer seasons, so they had more episodes per season. So they had, roughly 22 to 24 episodes per season. And then, they would also have, think about Friends and think about a lot of soap operas and things like that. They would have they would have 26 seasons. Like, I know I appeared on a television series called Neighbours, which is also seen in the UK and Australia, and might have appeared in Canada for a little bit, not sure. But that ended about a year ago, and that had done 26 seasons. So, like, the main cast that get, onto those TV shows back when it was all about cable TV and ad revenue dollars, a lot of ads were being put on cable TV, and that was how the studios made their money. So the more eyes that were seeing, those ad revenue dollars means more money that was being put back on to have those television shows watched more and reruns and reruns. And those shows are still on streaming today. But unfortunately with streaming, it's a vacuum. It's a box. You go in for, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. You shoot out the entire season, which, nowadays is only like 8 to 10 episodes. And that would take maybe a few weeks. And then you get paid for the amount of time that you shoot. And then you go away and that's done. And maybe if you're lucky, you get 2 or 3 seasons. Yeah. But with the whole business model of streaming, what they've done is if a show gets picked up and gets popular, which we don't, that's another thing why we're striking, is we don't know the data of television shows. So when streaming first appeared, they would show us the data of the viewership data of how many people were watching these shows. So then actors would know if the show was popular or not. And then when it came to season 2 or season 3, actors would start renegotiating their contracts. And obviously, if the show was popular, they could renegotiate for a higher wage and, better residuals and things like that. But now that that's disappeared, we have no idea how well the show actually does. And, Netflix is one of the biggest, is the biggest streaming platform out there. And they don't tell us. So if I summarize, so one thing, minimum wages, we're fighting for minimum wages so that can be increased, because over the last, several years with inflation, with the economy, wages for actors and writers have not kept up with inflation. So we're for the increase in the minimum wage. We're for just to be able to, keep up with inflation and then give us, a little bit on top. So they don't want to give us that. They counter propose with, a lot lower percentage. So that's one thing we're fighting for. Number 2 is residuals, so that we can actually get residuals with streaming. Because once it's on a streaming platform, that's it. You don't get, you might get, if you've seen, a lot of actors have been posting their residual checks online, you'll see 7 cents. 2 cents, 3 cents, you'll see $1. The worst I've seen it is literally a check has been mailed out for $0.
I've seen that too.
And I'm just like, it makes no sense. Legally, they have to send out the check, but legally, they only have to send out the check if money is actually owed. So I understand when a check is sent out for 0.01 cents, because legally they have to send that out. But at the same time, the check and the stamp costs more than the check you're sending out for the actor or the talent to go and cash that check is costing them more. The time it takes them to cash that check, the gas they're spending to go and cash that check, it's ridiculous. So there's no residuals, basically no residuals. another one of the major key issues, again, that we're fighting for is a bigger contribution cap from the studios to the health and pension fund, once we've completed a job. And part of the residuals is a cut from the studios that gets sent to the health and pension fund. So that the contribution from the studios is what helps actors and writers be able to meet that quota. So, it's not all just coming out of the earnings that we're, making, which, as I've mentioned, is next to nothing. One of the biggest, and this is probably the absolute biggest, is the fight back on AI, which the studios have been really unwilling to relent on. And I am dumbfounded, and so everyone is dumbfounded by the fact that they've come out and said that they proposed a groundbreaking AI proposal, which has never been put forward before. That's because AI has never been an issue. But their groundbreaking proposal was that background actors come in for 1 day's pay, which is an average between 200. If you're doing creature work, which I've done, which has been roughly $350, but an average background actor makes between $100 and $200 a day. So the studios want to pay that one-time fee between $100 and $200, bring us in, get us scanned, so scan our image, and then they own our likeness, our sound, the way we move, the way we talk, in perpetuity, forever, for the $200 payment. And they want to call that groundbreaking. I'm like, that's not groundbreaking. That's myself and every other actor and anyone who has some sort of common sense and logic knows that that's ridiculous. It's not groundbreaking at all. Like, how can you be proud of yourself to put that forward? You are essentially eliminating the background in, working actor industry. Like, we're never going to work again. And I think another thing to be said about that is that I'm too confident about how quickly and how well they can implement this whole AI background system. I mean, and the amount of money that these studios are investing into AI, I understand that, AI is a step forward and, there's always going to be progress in every industry, but I think there needs to be boundaries and lines, and which is what we're striking about, is strong regulatory AI language in our contracts that protects us from being undercut by machine labor. I mean, it's not even labor, undercutting human labor for machines. And now James Cameron, with Terminator, obviously he has said some things about, he warned us in the past, which I think, and I've mentioned it on, my threads and on my social media about AI. It's not about the fact that I think some people are like going to the point where they're like, oh, we're going to be killed by AI and all that. It's like, I mean, we don't know where future is going to go, hopefully as human beings, we're all on board with, stopping AI before it gets to the point of killing us. But I think more to James Cameron's point is that, we're increasingly developing a authoritarian AI world, where AI is going to take away our freedoms and our ability to provide for ourselves. And I think, in a sense, they aren't going to kill us directly, but in taking away our ability to provide for ourselves and the ability to think, as human beings and, think about how we interact in a less, human world, that's going to take away, our livelihood and, in a sense, wipe us out.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's unfortunate because there's such a huge value with humanity, right? And film, TV, they're mediums that are made by creatives. They're mediums that are made by like humanity. And like, if we're taking away that human value from it, I mean, what's the heart in all of it? I mean, recently I feel like with films in the past like maybe 5 years have lost a lot of its humanity in it. Because I don't know if it's because they're not paying the writers enough, if they're not like investing in it enough, but I feel like there's this trend that's more and more about getting as much content out as possible and removing all the quality from it. And if we accept all this AI replacing humans, I mean, what does that say about this medium that we care so much about? I mean, people spend hundreds of dollars a month on streaming services to have some entertainment, but everyone complains about shitty movies that are coming out. And I mean, no one likes that. No one likes to finish a movie and was like, I just wasted 2 hours of my life. Instead of watching a movie where you've just been in awe for the past like 2 hours and have just enjoyed that time. I mean, it's so important to think about that. And it makes me so sad to think that studio executives or, I mean, people with lots of money basically are just accepting this. And they're being like, you know what, I just want to make more money and sit on my throne that's already having way too much money and it's already like just abusing so much of their power that it's very unfortunate that we're removing the human value of it all and thinking about all these jobs that will be lost. And I mean, and this goes with any industry. It's not just with film, it's not just with TV, it's not just with writers, it's with everything. I mean, we have to think about the impact that this strike has on every industry. We need to think about how AI could replace so many jobs and how unfortunate that would be, because we need that human connection. It's what makes this world so good. And I'm someone that has a lot of like positivity into this human world, and I think that there's so much value in humanity, and I think that unfortunately it's not being recognized enough. And I think like with residuals, that's like the first step that we need to think about. That we need to make more laws on AI in film, but in everything as well. I think like we need to protect and then value our human brains, our human creativity and who we are. I mean, just thinking about Netflix, as we were saying before, Mandy Moore, who's the main character in This Is Us, has been gaining residuals of 6 cents. I don't know if it's per month or per 3 months or whichever, but 6 cents on a show that is one of the most watched on Netflix. It's crazy. And I think about just myself. I pay what, $25 Canadian a month on Netflix, and I'm just one person. And how many people are on Netflix? There's millions of people watching things on Netflix. They're making millions and millions of dollars, and of course they're just producing more content, but they do have the power and the value to pay those residuals to every single actor that has worked on that. I mean, I feel like it's just a basic, it's just basic humanity. It's just basic respect.
And I mean, that's what it comes down to, is the reality of it is it just comes down to basic human rights. Like, I mean, they want to dress it up as this and that, and or they want to dress it up with all this false narrative about greed and not having enough money and Wall Street and all that. But at the end of the day, it's like, do you care about the people who are working their ass off to produce this product for you that you're making not millions, billions of dollars off? These CEOs, these eight top CEOs, earn more money combined in one year than the entire industry makes. The entire industry, of the people that produce the content for them. Bob Iger, who, unfortunately he put his foot in his mouth and he decided to go and do a public interview, and now he's become, the CEO face of, this whole strike. He has called us on, public TV. He called all of us unrealistic when he has, in one day, he makes $78,000 a day. He made in 2022, he made, not him personally, but collectively the 8 CEOs of all the studios and things made $773 billion in 2022. And sure, they, obviously their whole goal was to please Wall Street, and their shareholders and everything. But it's not about just pleasing the shareholders. It's not about just pleasing, Wall Street. I mean, ultimately, if you don't make the people happy, Wall Street the shareholders are going to suffer in the long run anyway. And they'll also, some articles I've read is that even the shareholders in Wall Street are getting a little bit, angsty because these studios are losing a lot of money. Like, it's ridiculous to the fact, they want to plead poverty and they are losing a lot of money, but they can easily remedy the situation by, getting back to the table and making the negotiation. Because one thing that we are doing, that SAG-AFTRA has put in place, is an interim agreement, which basically means that actors can still work on independent projects, which is one thing that's really good, is that independent projects will get, their spotlight, because we are striking against studio companies and anyone who's involved with the AMPTP, which is the Alliance for Motion Picture Television Producers, and they represent the studios. So basically, these independent productions, if they want to work with union actors, can apply for an interim agreement, and those actors can work on these projects. And the only way these independent productions can get union actors is by agreeing to everything that a SAG-AFTRA is proposing to AMPTP. And I know there's been discussions around about, like, well, what about, obviously their goal is to sell the project and eventually sell it to a studio, because that's how, they'll make all their money. People have been worrying that there's a loophole that, the studios are just going to buy all of their independent, productions once they're allowed to. But the protection that's in place, that if the independent productions have to agree to all of our proposals, and once there's a final proposal, put in place and agreed to by the AMPTP, those agreements will be ratified to reflect the finalized terms. And then any studios that want to acquire these projects have to agree to all of the proposals. So it's ridiculous to the fact that they're stonewalling and gaslighting, so hard now. We're in week 6, that one way or another, they are going to have to agree to these proposals, whether it's now or whether it's when they acquire an independent project. Because there's no way they're acquiring any projects without agreeing to the proposals, either now or in the future. So they're losing $30 million a day. The entertainment industry is losing $30 million a day. That, the actors and writers are, withholding our labor. And so it's $150 million a week. It's not just the actors and writers who are suffering. It's all the local businesses. It's all the below the line people. It's the restaurants. It's the flight. It's the the hotels. It's the local businesses. It's the janitors. It's even unfortunately, we don't look at it like this, but even the audience. The audience is suffering. Because they're not getting good content, and then it's even reflecting back on the studios. Is that now we're seeing that a lot of people are canceling their subscriptions. And we're not calling for that. There was a lot of discussion in the earlier days of the strike. Is SAG-AFTRA and WGA calling for a boycott of streaming services? And we're not. And we're still not. But as we see, that is gradually happening because of the delay on content. And the reason the strikes are going for so long and potentially are going to go for, into 2024, and SAG-AFTRA said that we're ready for that, they're financially prepared for 6 months, is the fact that they're, playing hardball, and the studio's bottom lines haven't necessarily seen the hit of the strike yet, because it takes a while for the content that had been released to get to the end of its cycle, and obviously whether or not they cancel it, which is seems to be Netflix's structure when a television series gets popular, rather than continuing it and renegotiating with actors, they cancel the series. And that's another thing that consumers are getting fed up with. This is, and the networks are trying to convince us that it's a limited series, and they're trying to convince us this is the new structure. This is the new model. You're going to get maybe 8 to 10 episodes, and then we're going to cancel it because, that's just how it's done. And I think consumers are getting fed up with it. And we're seeing the studios are panicking. Even though they don't want to show that they're panicking, truth be told, they did not expect SAG-AFTRA to go on strike. It was a complete, curveball for them. They expected DGA to go on strike. They expected WGA to go on strike. And their original playbook was to create one deal structure and force it upon all unions. Unfortunately, I'm not saying anything bad about any other unions, but unfortunately the DGA did decide to accept the proposals and the negotiation agreement that was put forward to them. WGA will not accept the proposals AMPT put forward. SAG-AFTRA will not accept the proposals that they have put forward. So at the end of the day, the only thing we can say to the AMPTP is we're going to continue to be on the strike lines until they're willing to give us a fair proposal, a fair contract that honors 160,000 union members and honors over 20,000 WGA members. And ultimately, until you give us what's a fair contract, we're not going to surrender from the strike lines. There'll be no acting, there'll be no writing.
Yeah. And I'm really happy to hear this, that you guys are still keeping on, even though it is a struggle and it's affecting so many people, and it's great to hear your message. So thank you with that. But only with Montreal, we're actually getting effects of this as well, because Montreal is a huge place for filming to happen, because it is much cheaper for the United States to film in Montreal due to taxes and it being a French-speaking province. There's like a lot to it, but basically there's a bunch of studios that are only meant for international films, mainly United States films, and that they've all been empty. It's the first year in the summer that there's practically no filming happening outside of our streets, and it's funny to see, because it's sad. It's sad because there's so many workers and crew people that are only waiting for the summer for international films to come film in Montreal, and now it's been the quietest summer. There's only
we all want to work.
Yeah,
we all want to work.
It's not that they don't want to. Yeah,
it's sad because the whole, also the narrative on the studios, like they're pretending to be on board with the whole, we just want to get back to work and we just want to see people back at work. It's like, well, literally put your money where your mouth is. You could end the strike tomorrow.
Yeah,
but you won't. Instead, you're willing to throw millions of dollars this way and that way and claim poverty when you're promoting jobs and posting jobs. $1 million job for an AI platform manager. Another $500,000 for an AI gaming strategy designer. Disney just posted another AI job for $1 million. It's
sad.
It's sad. It's like you say you want people to get back to work, and then you're gaslighting.
Yeah, it's sad that they're even promoting this, that they're even proud to share a job posting to take care of that. It's so disappointing that this is what our world is coming to, and I saw actually a statistic a few weeks ago that CEOs of studios about 50 years ago would make about 30 times the amount of the average worker in writing, and it was in writing specifically, which in a sense, it always makes sense that the CEO is going to make more money, which is okay. But currently, the CEOs are making at a minimum 300 times the amount that the average worker or the average writer is doing currently. 300 times is a lot of times. And this is just in 50 years that it has increased exponentially, in a sense. Like, it was 30 times 50 years ago, but now it's 300 times. It has increased to a point where it's absolutely unfair, and it's disgusting to see how disconnected these studio executives are to the reality. I don't think that these studio executives have lived in a really long time, or if they ever have lived a day in their life where they have only had $30 in their bank account and that they weren't sure if they were going to be able to eat for the next
And
year.
that's why, yeah, that's why it's so infuriating. Like, I mean, you see from social media, yeah, we all look happy on the picket lines. Like, we don't want to show, like, I mean, obviously there are people, voicing their anger and their disgust and stuff. But the image on the picket line is of solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
There's never been more solidarity in labor and in union labor than there has been before. To think, that people like Bob Iger, who can say that we're being unrealistic when he's never been through, do I pay my credit card bill? Do I buy my groceries this week? Do I pay my rent this week?
Mm-hmm.
And for him to also say that when he's, lounging around at $1 billion summer retreat with, Mark Zuckerberg, with Ted Sarandos, with David Soblo, other billionaires, which they all flew to on private jets. And then he has the audacity to say that people who have, less than, the average American has less than $500 if they were faced with an emergency. For him to be like, we're unrealistic, I think you need to wake up and, see what kind of reality you're living in. You have a $50 billion yacht, and it's like, the wealth equality gap has just gotten more and more, ridiculous in the last, decade. And I am not against capitalism. I think capitalism is, at least in America, is the way of the world. And, if you pick up your bootstraps and you work, then you should be able to provide a living for yourself, support yourself. So it's not how it is. I've seen many things on social media that says, like, if you work a full-time job, like, 60 hours a week, you should be able to afford a one-bedroom studio apartment and, be fine, have food on the table and all that. It's like, it's not. Like, people still struggle to do that, and they work, like, 90 hours a week. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And so I can't comprehend it. It's sometimes too much for me to even think about. But it's ridiculous. These people who they don't do the work get so much money. Like UPS, one thing that really sinks in for me, they're also on part of, the actors and writers strike because they're Teamsters. And Teamsters are people who drive, who, do warehouse jobs, who package, like UPS, Amazon drivers, drivers for studios, drive around the actors, the talents, the writers, all that stuff. Specifically for UPS, those companies that make billions of dollars and the CEOs that make billions of dollars, they never put their hands on the packages. Similarity, so I can't say that word, but to the actors and the writers that we perform, we bring the shows to life, the writers write the content. We touch the product. We create the product. The CEOs have nothing to do with the product, and they make all of the profits. They make all of the, benefits. So, it's just the system, as I've always said, the system is broken and it's time for a change. And the fact that each day we see more and more people willing to strike because they know if we don't strike now and put our foots down, in 5 years we won't have a job to come back to. So it's now or never, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a question from someone online, so I'm going to read it because it's on my computer. So it's a question from Sohan, which was one of our guests from our live discussion on Hereditary a few weeks ago. And it is his question is, will the SAG-AFTRA strike be a catalyst for good mainstream films? What is your opinion on that?
I think that's a very interesting question because depends on what you define by mainstream, film. I think it'll definitely be a catalyst for more independent, stories. And as we talked about, exploring more of that human condition, the exploration of the human condition of the telling of these independent stories, because I think so much today with the whole studio system, it has been all about, pumping out, stories and pumping out franchise films purely for profit and making a return simply for Wall Street. And that's where people have gotten sick and tired of, this whole franchise structure of film and television. So I think now that the studios have been, struck, it's going to give more of an opportunity for independent films and television to become more mainstream, and we can get more, I think, heartfelt content out there that really truly explores what the human condition is about. Myself personally, I'm working on a few independent films that really get to the heart of what it means to be human and explore, things like testing the bounds of love for, your fellow human being, or, for a fellow member, human being that you love, like, a family member. My project, specifically one of my projects, is to test the bonds between a mother and a son. How far is she willing to go to save her son, or, express love on her son when in order to save her son might test her morals, her values, and her values of what it means to be a human being. And, like, is she potentially willing to give up her soul and her son's soul for, keeping him alive, So it's like, your soul versus actually being alive. So it's that exploration of the human condition and how far you're willing to, push that. So
that's super interesting. Well, if whatever comes out, let me know about it, and I'll definitely review it and check it out. That's for sure, and promote it, of course. I would love to do that. But speaking of independent films and giving more space for them, the Toronto International Film Festival is happening in the next few weeks, and I was planning on going, but I decided not to at the end because of the strike, because of many reasons, basically, that I decided not to go. But a lot of big films are not showing up at the TIFF International Film Festival, which usually in past years there's always like these big blockbuster films that are premiering there. But this year it's very little film or studio films are being released there, which is really interesting. And it has given the space to a lot of independent films. I know some of my friends, their film is actually being released there, and it's really exciting to see that, like, without this strike, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to release at TIFF, which is really interesting to see this different landscape. And I'm really excited to see where this is going to head for the future with other independent films and the releases, and seeing perhaps at big awards if it's going to be more independent films that are going to be showcased, or if we're going to keep having all those big studio films as we usually do. So I'm excited to see where this is going to go. And what is your hope in the outcome of this strike and the end of all of this?
Honestly, my, hope is that we can get everyone back to work. Unfortunately, before the strike, I wasn't necessarily working as much myself personally, but regardless of the outcome of the strike, I just want, this industry as a whole to get back to work, because outside of myself, this industry is, creates an income for millions of people. And, me personally, right before the strike was underway, I did do a series of auditions and for some major projects, and I had a very good shot at being casted for one of them. So, personally for myself, if the strike ends, that would be good for me, because I can follow up and hopefully, you'll see me in a major project soon. But regardless of that, I just want people to be able to provide for themselves. This has been a very hard time. We've just kind of still be coming out of the impact of COVID. Things haven't still fully recovered yet. So for this industry to be, at a standstill is very unfortunate. So yeah, we just want people to get back to work, to be able to provide for their families and for themselves, and create a new wealth of films and television by independent artists, so that we can kind of dismantle this broken system that we have of the 1%ers being at the top, the CEOs, holding all the power, and we can flip it and give more power to the independents, who honestly, at the end of the day, we do really control the power. Like we all say, you can't do it without us. You can't do it without writers. You can't do it without actors, and that's what we're seeing today. So, we all say, we'd like to see you try, and they haven't been able to yet. So
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine an AI of Leonardo DiCaprio trying to fight a bear. I'm not sure that's gonna work as nice as they anticipated to be, and I'm not sure people are gonna appreciate it as much. So
the A-listers will definitely have a major pushback on being scanned. Unfortunately, I have been scanned a few times, so that's a personal issue for myself as well with AI. But yeah, definitely for anyone. I think not even just for our industry. I think as an inflection point across the globe for all other industries. AI, you think AI is not going to phase out your job? It's going to happen. Like AI is going to do things that we can't even imagine yet. So we need to put our foot down now, before we are squeezed out.
Absolutely. So overall, to wrap this all up, we want to have more genuine and authentic representation of all sorts of people in film and TV and in every medium, of media. Definitely, that's something. Genuine media, authentic media. That's what we're talking about. We want to have AI have more restrictions on future work, not just in film, but in any industry. I think humanity is something we need to put more value on. There needs to be fair pay. There needs to be for actors, for writers. There needs to be more talk about independent films. There's just so much work that needs to be done, as we have all outlined throughout this whole discussion. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add, Sam, before we close this off?
No, I'm very happy with the discussions we've had today. But if anyone who has been on the live with us today, or anyone who watches this as you come across it, if you have any questions regarding the strike and feel like you're still a little bit in the dark, and you still feel like maybe this whole false narrative of actors and writers demanding more money purely because of greed, please feel free to DM me. I would absolutely love to clarify any questions that you have, and if I don't know it, I will find out, and I will let you know, because I think it's very important that we clarify the narrative of why we are striking, and why the strike is going on for as long as it has been, simply because the studios are being greedy, not the actors and writers.
Absolutely. That's well put. That's well talked about. And I mean, Sam is a great person to reach out and talk to. I mean, he's always so open to just be kind, and just being so open to share his story and talk. And I mean, I'm so grateful that you're here tonight and taking this time for it's been so great to hear, and so educational as well to hear you talk about the strike. You opened my eyes to other issues that I haven't thought about, and that's why it's so good to have you on here. So thank you so much for your time, and for all your insight. It's been such a good time. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me on. And when any of my projects get sold, or I'm in a project, I would love to have another talk with you.
I would love that. That would be great. So we'll definitely talk more about this in the future. This is not our final talk. That's for sure. It's good to have a friend somewhere else in the world. Good times.
That's true.
Awesome. Okay, so if ever anyone knows a writer, an actor, a director, a producer, anyone in the film industry, I would like to continue on this series and talk more about with another actor, with another industry person, to just continue this actor chat series and see where this goes. So if ever you know someone, just let me know, and then we can schedule this out and make this happen. Or else I host live movie discussions every month where we talk about a recent film that has been going on and talk about, I mean, the value of it in general, like what is the human part behind it and how it made us feel. So I always encourage everyone to think critically, to watch media critically, whether it is just by what is actually in the media itself and all around it as well, to educate yourself on whatever is being talked about in the film, whatever is around the film, the actors, everything. That's how we become better people and understand others. So that is it. That is it. I made my speech. I did it. So
Awesome.
I did it. Awesome. So thank you so much, everyone, for making it. If ever you have any other questions, you can send either of us a message or just send a comment, and we will take our time to reply to you. So thank you so much for making it. Bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.